We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H.
Anyway, moving on to David B. on Facebook. David has finished his basement home theater room, and now it's time to connect and configure his speakers. That's exciting. He's using a Marantz SR5011, and he has 7 speakers total. The front 3 speakers are easy. And by the way, on the podcast here, we're showing the deconstructed room.
That's how it started, and then it's quite the transformation, huh?
His finished room is just sexy. I'm just here to tell you. It's the red and black color theme. I dig, man. I'm into
it. Reminds me a little bit of, what would it be, like maybe 2001?
Yeah, a little too that. But for me, it's a little 80s retro. Like I want a Nagel picture hanging. Anyway, front 3 speakers are easy. They clearly connect to the front left, front right, and center speaker binding posts. But the 4 remaining speakers are all in ceiling. Since his couch is up against the back wall, 2 of the in ceiling speakers are basically in line with his couch, like right over his head. And they're about 3 feet out to either side of the couch. The last 2 speakers are about 4 feet in front of the couch and the same width apart as the front left and right speakers. Which speakers get wired to which binding post on the back of his Marantz, and what should they be called in the speaker setup menu? That is a very good question. My first instinct is that those that are right above your head and off to the sides, that's awful close to where just regular surround speakers are supposed to go. And so my instinct would be to just make those, you know, like in a regular 5.1 system, make those your surround speaker.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, he's got an SR5011, which can connect 7 speakers, and that's it. That's where it maxes out. Can't do 9, can't do 11, so he tops out at 7 speakers. Okay. Absolutely right. The front 3, fairly obvious. That's your front left, center, front right. But yes, the 2 speakers that are more or less directly over your couch and spread wide apart, those should be connected to your surround left and surround right binding posts.
There you go.
Now, the 2 speakers that are in the ceiling in front of your couch a little ways and closer together.
When he's sitting on the couch, they're 4 feet in front of his face and up on the ceiling.
That's correct. Yeah,
that's right.
That's where they are. Those should be your Atmos speakers, and I would probably label them as top fronts. The way that the angles work out, that's where they're going to be.
Because they're in front of you. They may not be in the front of the room, but they're in front of you.
That's right. So, the little tricky part is that on the back of the Marantz SR5011, there are no speaker binding posts that say top fronts. They say surround back. That's what they're labeled. And those are the ones you have to use for your top front speakers.
Your top front speakers are labeled
surround back on the back of that Marantz AV receiver. Those, the ones that say surround back are assignable.
Okay.
Right? So they can be assigned. Those could end up being your zone 2 speakers. They could be front heights. They could be top fronts. They could be top middles. They could be Dolby enabled upward firing front speakers. Those are the assignable speaker binding posts. So it is, I completely understand someone being confused. They're like, I have 2 more left over that say surround back. Not only that, if I went from the front of the room to the back of the room, why are the ones that are up in front of me connected to the binding posts that say back? You know, like, all of this stuff is understandably confusing.
Much like that Pioneer earlier that should have labeled things differently.
Right.
They should have said surround back / assignable.
Yeah, and it might even be written on there assignable somewhere, but nevertheless, your front 3, pretty self-explanatory. The 2 that are over your couch and spread wide apart, those are connected to your surround left and right, and the 2 that are in the ceiling in front of you physically connect to the binding posts that say surround back, and when you do the setup, you should call them top fronts. So that's the solution here.
Makes sense to me. Moving on with his questions, he just has the one SVS PC 2000 subwoofer for now. It's kind of back and to the left if you're sitting on the couch. He did a subwoofer crawl. Realistically, there were only a few spots in his room where it could go, just like we talked about earlier. And along the back wall to the left of the couch is where it sounded best. The instructions say to start with the subwoofer's volume knob at the halfway point. After running Odyssey, he more or less felt like he wanted to turn the subwoofer up a bit at all times. So what should he do? Turn it up. Should he set the subwoofer's volume knob higher and then run Odyssey again? No, no, no. Just turn it up. That's why the second half of the knob exists. It's okay, man. You want more? You got more. And so he's wondering, is this an indication that he actually needs a higher output subwoofer? No, it outputs more. Turn it up. Go for it. Grab the knob. Turn it.
Lee's pretty much correct. Now, sometimes instead of turning the knob on the back of the subwoofer up even higher, you can just go into the AV receivers menu and increase the subwoofer's trim level a little bit.
Because looking at the size of his room, that sub, that PC2000,
should be fine. Should be fine.
Handle it. So.
And he's only left it at halfway, and we don't even know where the trim level was set by Odyssey. It might have been set to -8 for all we know.
True.
Right? With the volume knob already set halfway up.
As someone who's been disappointed with what the receiver thought I ought to get bass-wise, I totally feel him on that.
Yeah, no, this is totally common. I mean, most people, Tom included, prefers having the subwoofer output goosed a little bit.
Yeah.
I want a little bit more, because Odyssey goes for pretty darn flat. That's one of the criticisms some people had. That's why some people really appreciate that new Odyssey app that allows you to manually change the target. Which is actually another solution to this, because his receiver is new enough that it does work with that Odyssey app. So there's a few things. There's a few ways to come at this. One, you could pay the $20, get the Odyssey app, manually change the target so that the bass has a little bit of a rise to it instead of being a perfectly flat line. That's one way you could do it. You could, like Lee says, just turn up the volume dial on the back of the subwoofer. That is okay. You could manually increase the trim level of the subwoofer inside the Marantz AV receiver. Or if you haven't tried dynamic EQ already, that's the first thing to try, is having dynamic EQ turned on, because if you're like most people, you're not listening at full reference volume. You're probably listening at -10, -20, something below reference volume.
TV shows, my amp always says -25.
Sure.
Or if I'm watching something exciting, it'll say -15. If it's a live concert, maybe I get on up around -10. But
either way, below
zero.
Below full reference volume, which would be 0 on the volume dial. So
no, I've never put it on 0. That would be scary.
If that's the case, then dynamic EQ will actually increase the volume of your bass to keep everything audible. So multiple ways to come at this, but you are absolutely not wrong for going, you know what? I don't really like just having completely flat bass. I would like a little bit more. That is totally fine.
Yeah, man. If you want to add some seasoning to that, you do it.
Yeah.
Have fun. Infinite Gary, I think he asks a question every time I'm on the show. I think that's cool. Infinite Gary, here we go, man. Part A for Infinite Gary. In Gary's turntable setup, he's using a really good-looking Project Perspective belt drive deck with a Sumiko Blackbird high output moving coil cartridge. Again, that's a mouthful. He's got a Project Tube Box SE2 preamp. It's a very pretty turntable. I'll give him credit for picking that. I like it. It's transparent. The base of it is.
Yeah, it looks like it's like kind of that acrylic material or something.
Yeah. I've often joked that my two favorite colors in the world are transparent and chrome. So that's my turntable right there. I need to add that to cart too before we get done. So that's what he has. He has the Project beautiful turntable, a Sumiko Blackbird high output moving coil cartridge, and a Project Tube Box SE2 preamplifier. He's used those components with a few different amps and receivers, but at the moment he's connecting them to his Marantz SR6010 AV receiver. The Marantz has a phono input, and the manual says it is, quote, compatible with turntables equipped with a moving magnet phono cartridge. When you connect to a turntable with a low output moving coil cartridge, use a commercially available moving coil head amp or a step-up transformer, unquote. Given that he's using a high output moving coil cartridge plus the tube phono preamp, what input should he use on the Marantz? And I bet the answer is a regular line input, not the phono input.
Yeah, so there's a few things, and you sort of have to. I'm not sure if it's
that tube box is all about. It is converting. Yeah. It's applying the RIAA curve, right?
Yeah.
And so
there's a few different things going on here.
Right. So once you've boosted and applied that curve, you now have a proper line level signal.
Yeah. So first, that Sumiko Blackbird High, which is a high output moving coil cartridge, not a traditional low output moving coil cartridge. It actually says, if you read through its specs, and you have to read somewhat carefully, so this isn't complete, this should have been told to you by the person you bought it from, essentially. But if you do read through, it says, because it's this high output moving coil cartridge, it basically has the same output as a standard moving magnet cartridge.
There you go.
It's a specialized high output version. It's not your
135. What were the units there? I forget.
Well, it's 47 kilohertz in impedance.
The impedance was
and then the amount of voltage that's coming out of it is equivalent to your standard moving magnet cartridge. Yeah. Now, the end result of that is that if you just took the turntable using this particular Sumiko moving or high output moving coil cartridge,
you wouldn't need anything.
You could actually connect that directly to the phono input of the Marantz. You could do that, and it would work. But the reason you're using that extra piece of equipment, that Project Tube Box SE2, is that it's first of all, it's a tube preamp, so it's coloring the sound somewhat, but hopefully in a pleasing way would be the idea.
It's pretty. It looks good.
It's pretty.
I like his turntable setup. I really do. And
it's applying it actually gives you a choice of some different curves in that. So it's more flexible. It gives you a choice of some things that you might want to do. But what you actually want to do, because it gives you a whole bunch of different input impedances that you could set it to.
So and none of them exactly match.
Well, it does, because it has the 47 kilo ohm setting.
But the ohms, the 135 ohm setting, I thought I saw something that did not match. Like you could pick 100, or you could pick 100 or 220 ohms.
If it were a traditional low output moving coil. But the Sumiko specifications say treat this like a standard moving magnet with 47 kilo ohm output. That's the trick. That's the trick. So there's a setting that you need to make on that Project Tube Box.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. What jumpers do you use?
You need to treat it like it's a standard 47 kilo ohm moving magnet cartridge. So that's one thing to be wary of. Okay. Now, after you've done that, the manual for the Project Tube Box preamplifier very clearly says this is now, exactly like Lee said, your standard line level output connected to, say, the CD input of your amplifier, your AV receiver or your amplifier, right? Don't connect it to the phono input of your AV receiver. We've already done that stage for you inside of this Project 2 box preamplifier. So connect it to your regular CD or auxiliary or tape or whatever, standard red and white, left, right inputs. That's where that goes. So yeah.
All right. So if his cartridge says, okay, so all he has to do is put no jumper on there at all.
There you go. Take it out of the box.
Take it out of the box and use it, and just plug it into a line and pay. Okay, we're golden then.
Yeah. What honestly, what makes this somewhat confusing is that Sumiko cartridge. Yeah. Because it is specifically a high output moving coil that they have set up to basically act like a standard moving magnet output. That's the thing to wrap your head around here. So as long as you get that, the rest is all pretty easy. You could forego the Project 2 box preamplifier entirely. You could just plug the outputs of your turntable using this particular high output moving coil cartridge. You could just plug that into the phono input of the Marantz and forego the preamplifier. That would work.
Might be fun to see which one you like better and see if you like the sound of your tube preamp as much as you think you do.
Right.
I would be curious to see if I could tell a difference. You might tell a difference in level. You might tell a difference in everybody that likes turntables loves the word warmth.
Oh, yes.
If you like turntables and you like tube amps, warmth is the greatest word in the English language.
Yeah, a little bit confusing, so I don't blame asking some questions about that, because it's not quite your standard thing. If you're like, oh, moving coil, I know what to do with this. It's like, I got to be a little careful.
All right, so plug it into a line input, but I would say also try without the preamp.
Without the preamp at all.
In the phono input and see which one sounds. Sure. Tell us what the difference is. Okay, so last week, Gary asked about his tabletop speaker setup, where he's using a pair of Dyne Audio 110 bookshelf speakers that are spaced only 34 inches on center apart. Tom and Rob were uncertain whether this was just for background music or if Gary is sitting near field close to the table. So Gary clarified that he uses this setup when he's playing keyboard. Yeah. So that's very cool. These are aimed right at his face when he's playing keyboard. The keyboard goes on its stand just in front of the table, and the speakers are on the table, and they're used for playing accompaniment. So Gary's playing along with the speakers. Is that
That's
what's
right.
going on here?
That's
Okay.
right.
So Gary's about 4.5 feet in front of the speakers, seated with his head in the sweet spot while he plays the keyboard. Given that info, is there a particular speaker that's similar in size to his Dyne Audio 110s that is considered exceptional? He even put that in quote, exceptional, that might perform particularly well for this task. He'd be fine with passive or self-powered speakers. Well, he's open to a lot of things. Does that mean he's unhappy with the Dyne Audios, or just kind of wondering if there's magic unicorn?
It's Gary. Gary just likes to buy and try stuff. You know,
he likes the magic unicorn dust out there.
That's
doesn't
right.
He? Yeah.
I certainly have something in mind that I would like if this were my setup, and if I had the budget to afford it, I'd be going for some KEF LS50s. Those, they call them their mini monitors. They're available in a wide variety of finishes, so you can get a look that I'm sure will appeal to you.
They look robotic from the future. I love it.
They're cool-looking speakers.
Yeah, I really do. I like the white ones with the bronze-colored driver. Now, is that a single driver?
No, it is a concentric driver.
Okay, so there's a little tweeter in the middle.
There's a tweeter in the middle, and then a woofer around there. Now, they're about an inch wider than the speakers he's using right now. Mm-hmm. And if you get because they are available both in passive and self-powered, so you have the choice. The self-powered version is about an inch deeper. The passive version is about the same depth. So they're very slightly larger than his current Dyne Audios, but that, I don't believe, would be an issue.
They're also very slightly larger than my budget.
Yeah, they're not cheap, but this is Gary. And he's like, is there something exceptional of this size?
The answer is yes. There's always something exceptional.
That would work particularly well in this setup, and I really think the KEF LS50s would. I think they'd be spectacular.
Yeah, that kind of driver where everything is coming from a single point as close as they can get it would be very appropriate in that situation.
Yeah.
Because he's in sweet spot, aimed right as his head. Yeah.
$1,500 a pair for the passive versions, $2,200 a pair for the self-powered versions. These are not cheap, but they are exceptional.
He said exceptional. He did not say cheap. Yeah. So if you can do exceptional, man, that's a gorgeous looking speaker. I'd love to be able to hear that. But I live in a town that doesn't have anything but a Best Buy. I'm not hearing that anytime soon.
You never know. I mean, KEF is pretty widely available. So
you think those $1,500 KEF bookshelf speakers are going to be at the Best Buy?
If you've got a Magnolia, maybe.
In Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We do not have a Magnolia. We have a Best Buy. You can go look at the OLED that I want. They do have that. They go that far, but they're not going to have it.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.